Welcome to another episode of Collective Conversations. We are switching up the way that we do our introductions to episodes on a go forward. So I want to start by saying that it was an absolute privilege to record this latest episode of Collective Conversations. I caught up with John R. Bradford III, who is the CEO and founder of PetScreening. And I want to read his bio in full because I'm not sure that I would do it the service that it deserves if we did it otherwise. So John R. Bradford III is an experienced entrepreneur and CEO. He is a professional property manager with a demonstrated history of solving business problems for the property management industry and is also involved in state government. He is the founder of two different companies, Park Avenue Properties and PetScreening, which were both started from the ground up. PetScreening has been nationally recognized 2 years in a row as one of the fastest growing privately owned companies in the United States. John is currently serving his fourth term in the North Carolina House of Representatives. He serves in House leadership as a senior chairman of the Finance Committee and is the chairman of the Alcohol Beverage Control Committee. John is also a statewide candidate running for North Carolina State Treasurer. John graduated from Clemson University in 1996 with honors and has a BS in engineering. In 2000, he obtained an executive MBA from the University of Memphis. John has been married for 22 years to his high school sweetheart, Shay. Together, they have 4 children, Jack, Molly, Sophie, and Macy. They also have 3 fur babies, Maggie, Berkeley, and Bob, the rescue cat. In his spare time, he likes to fish, camp, and travel with his family. John and I had a fascinating conversation, unpacking everything from policy at the state level or even the national level, right on through to the platform called PetScreening, which primarily serves the single-family home industry, but is quickly made headway into the multi-family industry. So I'd like for you to sit back, grab your favorite beverage, and listen to this well-rounded, fast-paced conversation with John R. Bradford III, the CEO and founder of PetScreening. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you.
How are you doing? It looks like you have a fantastic background there.
Yeah, you know what? My company, we work remote on Fridays, and so I have a cabin just right along, it's in North Carolina, but near the Virginia border, and it's going to get cold tonight, so I want to make sure I had everything tightened up. Don't want pipes freezing. So it's a beautiful view, and so I thought I'd sit outside and join you on your call here.
John, I think I'm reflecting right now, real time, but I'm pretty sure you are the first person that I've ever interviewed who was sitting outdoors during the course of the conversation. So that's awesome. There's always a first.
Well, there you go. I'm in a very remote area, but I have fiber here at my cabin, which is really it was a grant given to this rural part, and so I've got great connection here at the cabin.
Oh, I love it. I feel like a lot of our viewers and our listeners would love to be where you're at today. So.
Yeah. And I'm usually wearing a suit, so this is a wonderful, this fleece I have on because of the weather is a nice change.
I love it. Well, John, again, welcome to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why we're here today instead of me doing it?
Thank you. Well, my name's John Bradford. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called PetScreening. And, we're a software platform. A lot of people think we test dog poo, and we don't. We don't do poo. We actually help property managers better handle their pet policies. We help validate reasonable accommodations for assistance animals. So if someone is seeking an accommodation for a service animal or a support animal, like an emotional support animal, ESA is a very popular one, we make sure that those requests, in fact, meet the Fair Housing Act guidelines. And then for just traditional dogs and cats, we collect a lot of data on the pet and the pet parent, and we look at it with a very complex algorithm that we've built over the last 7 years, and we give a FIDO score. So everyone has a FICO score for people. We have the FIDO score for pets, and our clients use that FIDO score to help fine-tune what I call their pet fees so that it covers the risk that they're taking.
So I'm curious, we're always, and I like the FIDO thing. I see what you did there. We're always curious here at the Multifamily Collective, the founder story. So were you scratching your own itch? Is that the origin story, or what is the origin story for
PetScreening? Yeah, so I'm actually a professional property manager. I know, Mike, you've obviously, you've been in the industry a long time, which is why you have the credibility you do. And I think, some of the best products are built because they are solving a true problem. They're a solution to something. And so for 15 years, I've been a property manager. I've been in the single family side of the business, not the multifamily, but our problems are the same. The portfolio is more spread out versus the I would say the density of, say, multifamily, but we still have to collect rents. We still have to deal with maintenance issues. We still have to deal with pet issues. And I had my own company. I had a management company. We were sizable for our industry. We were one of the larger management companies. We had really developed a reputation nationally. We were doing management for a lot of the REITs, such as Invitation Homes, American Homes for Rent, Progress Residential. Before they had their own in-house shops, if they were in the markets where we were their partner. So we were doing all their management. And frankly, I'm a pet lover. I don't. Do you have a pet, Mike?
I do.
Yeah, so I mean, 70% of Americans have pets. We're very pet friendly here in the United States, and it's not just one pet. Everybody, we actually have 1.6 pets. I'm a 3-pet family. How many do you have?
2.
All right, so there you go. We're 5 pets between us. We're 2.5 averages between you and me. And so, pets are out there. They're prevalent. They're part of the family. But pets bring risk, right? Anything that's living brings risk. And so I also fundamentally have never believed that all pit bulls are dangerous. I understand that they are dogs that can bite and they have strong jaws, but all dogs bite. I think you can raise a pit bull by a loving family, and the reduction of risk by having just a good pet parent, I think is important. And so I think data can tell a bigger story. So as a property manager, my company had a dog bite incident, and it was with a portfolio of products that was handed to me, a rent portfolio where I didn't place this dog, or the resident for that matter. But what I learned was there was nothing in the file. Imagine that, nothing in the file on the dog.
Never happened.
And which does happen, especially when you inherit other assets, right?
That's
so
right.
But it did raise the question, like, what was my own company? What were we getting on every dog or cat? And our in-house counsel gave me a very academic answer. And so I tested that against our actual property managers. I think we had 11 property managers. So I started going one by one, saying, hey, what do we do when someone says they have a pet? And I got 11 different answers. And I thought, wow, as good as we are, as sharp as we are, as forward thinking as I believe we were, we just weren't really managing this very well. And so kind of the idea, I think, started to develop. I also have this you may not be familiar with my other gig, but I serve in the North Carolina House of Representatives.
I do.
And so, okay, yeah. So that's a unique perspective because in North Carolina, since I've been serving, I have carried our state's tenant landlord legislation. And so I have worked with the North Carolina Apartment Association, the North Carolina Association of Realtors. I've worked with NRHC. And I enjoy that because I understand property management, and residents and tenants have rights, and so do landlords. And so everyone in the legislature, both the Senate and the House in North Carolina, were shoving people to me if something came up about assistance animals. And then I started to see, wow, there's a lot of confusion here. And that was sort of the second pen. And I took those 2 pens together and said, I'm going to come up with a product to help property managers navigate the complexities and challenges of pets and pet policies, and also animals, because you and I both know that an animal in housing is a different context than a pet. I mean, to the common person just not in housing, you'd say a pet is an animal. Well, I guess that's true. But in our world, an assistance animal is something very specific definitionally. And so our product tries to help you navigate that. And that's how it was all started. PetScreening was available as a domain. When I got on GoDaddy, this was 7-8 years ago. It said, when I looked it up, it was a screen that slid into a pet door, like in a door. And I'm like, well, the domain petscreening.com is available. So I bought it for $11. So I bought PetScreening because when I got my MBA, it was like a business is in its name. And I thought, well, pet screening, that's what we're doing. We're screening pets. And but I bought animal screening, so I own animalscreening.com, I own animalscreener.com, and I own petscreener.com. All four of those. They all point back to pet screening.
I love it. That's a good way to do it. It's a moat. It's a hedge of protection, right?
Absolutely.
So you broached on something there that's very interesting to me as it relates to service animals, and
yes,
and I have to believe in my heart of hearts that is not that I believe it. It is a fact. It is a very complex scenario.
Yeah.
I want to underpin this story by telling a very quick story, my own experience. I was sitting in a boardroom one day and I was listening to an attorney talk about taking her Great Dane onto an airplane. And she literally disclosed out loud that she got a service animal certification from a doctor, not really in the appropriate way, and used that to get her Great Dane on the airplane. I have to believe that happens in the apartment. Well, I know it does.
It does happen.
So I'm really curious how pet screening works to combat that kind of dishonesty.
So I mean, pet screening, we don't really do anything magical. What we do is we follow the federal guidelines, and it's educating all the parties, right? Because you have multiple people involved. When someone is seeking a reasonable accommodation for an assistance animal, and see, assistance animal used to be, and this is pretty complex, so I'll try to keep me from going too deep here. There was a time when assistance animal in housing used to include service animals and support animals, all blended into one. Just assistance animal covered everything, okay? Not to be confused with the ADA, which is applicable when you go to go to dinner tonight and you see a dog at the table next to you, or maybe you go into Lowe's or Home Depot and you see someone walking a dog. Assuming that they're not pet friendly, someone has a service animal. The ADA, everyone conflates the ADA with the Fair Housing Act, but they're actually very different. ADA is all for public accommodation, so things open to the general public. The Fair Housing Act and HUD is over private accommodations, which would be things like rental properties. Right. But the Fair Housing Act, for the longest time, just kind of combined everything in this one term called assistance animals. Well, in 2020, that was from 2013 to 2020. In 2020, HUD came in and said, we're going to follow or mirror the ADA for service animals. So they busted the term of assistance animals into two: service animals and support animals. And so now there's different review processes of what you can do in the Fair Housing Act, but even the service animal rules or guidelines under the Fair Housing Act is slightly different than the rules for service animals in ADA. And then, by the way, you have the ACAA, which is the Air Carrier Access Act, which is airlines. So what was happening is everyone gets confused between those acts. And what PetScreening does is we come in and we make sure everyone understands we're talking about one act. It's the Fair Housing Act. So forget about ADA, forget about the airlines, because those are not applicable as it relates to assistance animals. And then what PetScreening does is we make sure we understand, are you seeking a reasonable accommodation for a service animal or a support animal? And once we know which one that is, we apply the proper review processes to make sure that the information we're collecting is permissible, and then we're applying the appropriate rules. And by doing that, the person who is submitting the accommodation, which people often say the applicant, right? But they're actually called the requester. That's their official name, but we'll call them an applicant. We want the applicant to know that there's a role that they have to play, because after all, they're seeking the accommodation. And so they have some work to do. They got to provide some things, especially as it relates to, say, support animals. But then you have a healthcare provider involved. So now you got to educate them. Then you have the property manager involved. They need to be educated. And so PetScreening, we're triangulating that and making sure everyone knows the rules. We treat everybody exactly the same. And we do it every single day. And we do it for 4.5 million rental units across the country.
Wow.
In all 50 states.
That is a huge number.
It's a big number. Yeah. I mean, Equity, I used to work there. We have all of Equity. Yeah. For example, they're these are some really smart companies, and we're so happy that they've chosen our services.
Definitely. I want to go back to something that I heard you mention in your lead statement. You're not only collecting information on the pet owner or the pet itself, but also on the pet owner. And I'm just interested, can you unpack that? You had a term for it. It sounded really cool, but
the pet parent. And so pet parent. Yeah. So think about the smallest of dog, maybe a teacup poodle or chihuahua, maybe. So they're really tiny, right? You and I would agree that a teacup chihuahua probably couldn't hurt a squirrel if it tried, right? So we would all agree that a teacup chihuahua is not going to kill or bite a child, right? So that we all instantly go, that's low risk, no problem. But what if the pet parent, Mike, refuses to keep that teacup chihuahua on a leash? And now it's running around its feet, and it's looking a lot like a squirrel to a bigger dog that is on a leash with its owner following the rules. And all of a sudden that dog, the bigger dog, gets stimulated seeing this chipmunk looking thing running around, even though it's a dog and it's fair game. And now that dog, unsuspecting, because the owner's just kind of maybe not gripping the leash hard, but just their dog's not really a puller. All of a sudden that dog takes off. Now it gets a hold of that little thing and it kills it. I mean, imagine who is responsible for that. Well, I can tell you the answer is the pet parent of the teacup chihuahua for not keeping it on a leash. And so what we do is we're making sure pet parents understand you've got rules like leashing, rules like waste pickup, rules like making sure my pet goes to the veterinarian or animal, pet or animal, by the way, goes to the veterinarian regularly, because most states have a statutory vaccination requirements for rabies. Those are all things that are very, very important. And a lot of property managers, I know, and I can say this because I am one. I still have all my professional designations, and I own rental properties just as an investor. So I like to say PetScreening was created for property managers by a property manager. And so there's a lot of areas where we just don't dig deep enough. And what PetScreening does is we kind of do the deeper digging. We collect that data. We put it on We codify it on a formal record, and then we have it at your fingertips. And it's just been incredibly powerful. I mean, I pinch myself, Mike, every day. I go places. It's the craziest thing. I was on an airplane, and like you're probably traveling for conferences. I was wearing a pet screening shirt, and I was in Utah, I think. And the stewardess says, "Oh my God, pet screening!" She's like, "I love it." She's like, "My apartment made me use it, but I use it with my doggy daycare because our clients can use their profiles with other things. Once they have all their pet data at their fingertips, they can share it." And I was like blown away that this person on an airplane somewhere knew our company. I mean, that was like one of those moments you go, "Wow, it's pretty neat."
I love that. I totally love that. So it's kind of like it sounds like a pet resume that you can transport wherever you need in terms
Yeah,
of.
yeah, and it is because we're the largest database of recorded pet incidents in the country. And what I mean by that is every property manager has the ability to report incidents. So if you have a dog biting incident, you can report that, and it will follow the pet and the pet owner into perpetuity. If you catch someone with an unauthorized pet, you can report an unauthorized pet incident. That will follow that person into perpetuity. If a person moves out and the cat has urinated the back bedroom and it's very pungent, and now you got to replace maybe carpet and padding and maybe even some subfloor, you spent $2,000, you can report pet damage. That will follow that cat. So those data points are very meaningful to our industry, and we collect that if there's a problem, and then we can share that with the next property manager as well. But of course, if there is no bad history, well, then that's a good thing. And this is about pet responsibility, pet accountability. We are not punitive, Mike. We love pets. In fact, I don't know, before we started recording, I fundamentally don't believe all pit bulls, German shepherds, chows, Dobermans, that these are dangerous dogs. I mean, yes, they are naturally guarding dogs, but if you have a wonderful pet parent, because I can promise you, Mike, if I took a Doberman Pinscher as a puppy, it would be the lickiest Doberman you'd ever meet, because I just know the way I love and cuddle my dogs and take care of them. And so if a housing provider turned me down just because it's a Doberman and really didn't understand, well, wait a minute, my Doberman's been to pet training program. My Doberman's microchip. My Doberman has every shots and then some. My Doberman's neutered. I mean, whatever that is. That says everything about the type of resident and pet parent you're going to have than just about the dog. And we don't force property managers to tell them what to do, what to take. We just try to give them data to make a better, more informed decision.
So it came to mind as you were speaking through that. I'm kind of thinking about the car world and Carfax. And so if
Yes.
you're, and I know it's not punitive, I want to highlight there and emphasize
Yes.
that it's not punitive, but if
It's
you
not.
did have a record of your dog being sort of non-compliant and or at risk, so to speak, does that follow you? Let's say I had pet screening here at Radco, pet screening at another community. You come and apply at my community. Does that
Yeah,
sort
it happened. It happened. I mean, it's happening. We've been around long enough where that's happening. And this is particularly important for the whole reasonable accommodation side of the business.
Yeah,
There's a handful of reasons in which a reasonable accommodation can be denied. And one of them is if there is a possible safety concern
sure.
about not the breed of dog, but a specific dog.
Right.
So if there was a prior record, a biting incident at another property, and it has been reported, and then now this person's seeking a reasonable combination, say with Radco, just for example. And
Sure.
if my company was doing this, we would see that and we would say, okay, well, who filed that incident? And then we would try to reach out and get more details. And then we would start investigating, well, was it a provoked incident or non-provoked incident? Because dogs can, I mean, if I'm a dog and you're kicking me, I'm going to probably bite you.
Yeah.
That's a provoked incident. But if I'm just walking down the road with my dog and then some strange dog runs over and attacks mine, that's an unprovoked, and that's a different level of behavior. And so we kind of dig down into those details when we know about them. And until pet screening, there is no place like this.
Right.
Now, at the end of the day, that while that data is important, I mean, it's part of our overall scoring process, because as you can imagine, a 7-year-old company, we don't have every pet in our database. So, we use the data we have when we have it, but notwithstanding not having, say, a reported bad pet incident, we have all this other data: vaccinations, photos, details of their veterinarian's phone number, a microchip number. All of those things tell a broader story. And that's where the FIDO score comes into play, because the FIDO score is really helpful to property managers. It's been really fun we trademarked that, by the way.
I love that. Yeah. I see that as a huge benefit. That entire scenario, I see it as a huge benefit, not only for
Yes,
the property owner, but also for the pet owner themselves, in the sense that you could have an incident, to your point, that was unprovoked, and it is there, but hey, look, here's the incident, here's why, and you're not at risk of taking this pet into your community. So I, that brings me back to another question of curiosity as it relates to governance. So you have somebody that moves into a community, and you mentioned inoculations and in it, keeping records of that and making sure that that's done on a periodic basis. Is that something that your platform actually tracks? And if somebody is not getting their pets vaccinations, things of that nature, then it'll send an alert to the pet
Yeah, that's
owner?
exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so we, once we, I mean, it's up to the pet owner to the pet parent to actually upload vaccination records and details. But then we have calendars and reminders, and this is really coming from a position of good. We want to remind the pet owner, the pet parent, that their vaccinations are going to be expiring. So we start alerting them just so they, because that's just good governance as a pet
Right.
parent, right? And we
Right.
let them know. But then we also, of course, alert the property manager or our client as well if in fact it expires. And so yes, we do all of that. And again, the idea is just to create a more responsible, more accountable community. If I'm I mean, obviously there was a day when I lived on site and rented, like most, I think people kind of go through that cycle before they start to buying homes. And if I was not a pet owner of any kind, I would want to make sure I'm living in a community where if I am surrounded by pets, that if I'm bringing my groceries in, I don't want to be accosted by an unvaccinated dog. I want to know that this community cares enough about my right to quiet enjoyment, and that I'm going to be safe. And I'm not fear mongering here. I'm not suggesting there's rabid dogs running all over. I'm just saying that it's just nice to know that my community is very supportive of pets, but it's also supportive of people that don't have pets, because I don't want to step on poo when I'm walking through the community park. I don't want to be have a dog with wet paws jump on my suit when I'm trying to get to the car because it's not being contained on a leash. While that dog is very well intended, it just wants to lick, and I would do it if I was in my gym shorts, but I'm in a suit. And so that's what pet screening tries to bring. Because one thing, Mike, we haven't talked about, and perhaps we will, is we've talked about pets, we've talked about assistance animals, but pet screening even screens non-pet owners.
Okay.
Yeah,
Talk to
yeah,
us
I
about
love your face. I love your. I was like, I couldn't have asked for a better face. You're like, here's why:
it.
people without pets still have an obligation to acknowledge and understand that not having a pet doesn't just stop there. It goes beyond the day you move in without a pet. It extends to 6 months in, I can't go get a pet. It extends to, I can't be a pet fostering parent. As noble as that is, and a wonderful thing, I cannot do that in this apartment or this rental home unless my landlord has put that in writing. I cannot pet visit. My girlfriend, my boyfriend, my partner cannot come over every weekend and shack and bring their dog without my landlord's permission in writing. And we codify that on a record so that if one day, let's say one of your assets, you get a phone call and say, gosh, little Timmy in unit 301 just got a dog biting incident, and you go look it up and say, well, Timmy has a no pet or no animal profile with pet screening. Well, now when the courts get involved, or an insurance company gets involved, and it comes out that it was Timmy's brother visiting with his dog, and his dog bit, you'll have this wonderful record showing where Timmy, your resident, knew that the brother should not have brought their dog. And Mike, I'm not joking. I would never make things up. I'm not in the business of doing that. We have companies that come to us at trade shows that say your no pet, no animal profile got us released from lawsuits because they knew that we did all the diligence we could, and we can't stand outside their door 365 days out of the year. We can't.
Right.
And so this whole no pet profile was not John Bradford's idea, by the way. When I started pet screening, we were only pets and animals, but we listened to our customers. And one regional manager at a multifamily, big name property management company said, John, we love your product, but let me tell you, we're still having problems. And this was before COVID, when on-site living was still very popular amongst like the on-site agents.
Oh,
They said, we'll move someone in last week with no pet, and then the next week we see them walking around with a dog. And we know who they are because we just moved them in. They're like, those people, that's a challenge for us. And that's when we went back to the whiteboard and said, well, what if we had a no pet profile? Get these folks on the record that they know. I mean, Mike, 20% of the people that start a no pet profile actually go back and switch it to a pet before they submit it.
oh, wow. So they intend to mislead, but then they see this form in front of them and they,
And it's more than a form. We have, listen, I told you I'm a lawmaker. I'm not an attorney. but I think I'd be a good one. I'm a lawmaker, and so we know words are very powerful on paper. And
Sure.
and when you're doing adjudication in the courts, there's a physical document known as an affidavit, right? And that is a legal binding document that if you go in and if you have an affidavit or something and you're lying, I mean it's serious business, right? It's a crime.
Right. Right.
So we have legal. Of course, this is a software product, so we use legal attestations. And our legal attestation is very similar to affidavit language. And they have to acknowledge after they've already given all the answers, that's the final step every single time. And that's important because if they're going to lie, Mike, and there's lots of ways that they can fib. Lie is a strong word, but I mean,
Sure.
really that's what it is. But, whatever. Stretch the truth, fib, whatever.
Right.
But if they say they don't have a pet, and they really do, and they go through that no pet profile, that no animal profile, and they've said, no, I agree I won't do this. I agree with this. I don't have a pet. And then they get that legal attestation, and then they hit that enter button. They double down that they're really telling the truth. Everything they're saying is true and accurate. And then that dog bite happens. That is the part that the courts are going to look at them, whether it be a jury of their peers. They're going to just look at them and say, not only did you lie, but you actually had a chance to go back and not do that, and you chose to move ahead anyway. That's very powerful. Very powerful. And that is part of our process across all three of those lanes. So if someone uploads a poodle picture because they really have a Doberman, because that property won't allow a Doberman, and then when we get to the end and they submit a legal attestation that what I'm submitting is true and accurate, and it's not a poodle, but they've said it's a poodle, and they've gone and got one off the internet, a little screen grab of a poodle, and then that pit bull or a Doberman, sorry, in this example, does something nefarious, how are they going to ever look a jury and a judge in their eyes and say, I made a mistake and uploaded a poodle? It just doesn't fly, right? No. And that's the power of our platform. And then when you couple that with the fact that we're free and we don't cost property managers a single penny, it's unbelievable.
Wait, say that one more time. Say that one more time.
Yeah, I said the fact that our service is completely free to property managers, completely free. It's like people almost go, what's the catch? And I'm like, well, there isn't a catch. I'm a property manager. I saw a problem. I solved it. I also am a property manager that I'm very tight. And I didn't want, as a property manager, I didn't want to be spending a lot of money for something. So I just went and made our product free. We make revenue, of course, but we only charge pet owners a very nominal pet application fee. People without pets don't pay a darn penny. It's free. I could never charge a no pet owner for anything. That'd be like crazy, right? So we don't, but we get them on the record for free, but it's still free to you. People seeking reasonable accommodations, I can't charge them. I don't charge them. You don't get charged. But if they have a pet, we do collect a small pet application fee. We truly make our money $20 to $25 at a time. That's how we get paid. That's it.
Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. I want to shift gears slightly. Talk to me about workflows. So, probably I just heard the word application. So yes. I'm assuming there's a workflow with this. Can you kind of unpack the workflow for our
audience? Absolutely. Yeah, so we are integrated with all the major software platforms. I mean, and if you think of them, we're integrated with them, and it's a two-way integration. So we are pinging back and forth with APIs every, I think, 9 to 10 minutes typically, all day long. So when somebody goes through one of those platforms, right, because there's many of them that are out there, we all know who they are. There's lots of big ones. When the human, the person, I call it the people application, when that process is finished and they hit the submit button, then those integrations, that's what triggers PetScreening as the next flow. And what happens is our API grabs certain information about that applicant, and then we send a direct communication to that applicant with very credible information so that they know this is legitimate, this is coming from the property where I'm obviously applying. And we make it clear that whether you have a pet or no pet, or if you have an assistant sound, doesn't matter, you need to go through this. And then they click a link, a little start here button, and then it takes them to a new browser experience of which they finish their application, if you will, whether it be a no pet profile, a pet profile, or an assistant animal profile. And when it's finished and submitted, every 9 minutes, the two products are looking for changes, and we push certain things back into that core product. And we push the key things back that a property manager would want to know, like the status, what's the FIDO score. You can even, in our tool, you can assign pet fees to the FIDO score. So if you've done that, we can push what pet fee it might be, because we deliver that news to the resident for you. So we'll tell the resident if it's $50 a month or $30 a month. And then now you can go plug that into your lease. And so it's very communicative back and forth using the APIs, and that's the way the workflow works. Now, obviously, there is a population of people when you start using PetScreening that are already living there, and they've already applied, right?
Right.
So they're not going to go and trigger that application process on, say, their second renewal, right? So for those folks, we have a digital flyer that often gets added into the renewal packet.
Okay.
And then what happens is that resident knows that in order to do my lease renewal, I have to click on the button in this electronic flyer. And when they click on that button, it kicks off the same workflow.
Understood.
And then about 18 months later, if a property is taking this this is really easy. I wouldn't say it's work free, because you got to make sure people are doing this. We can only remind them so many times.
Right.
But if you really are making sure every resident and every renewal are truly doing some profile, because everyone should have something, because it's one of those 3 buckets, then in about 18 months, everyone on site has it, and then everybody's in the queue.
That makes sense. So if someone moves from one community to another, let's say it's not same property management company, it's a different property management company, and they
all the time. Yep.
and I know that it's mobile, they sort of carry this pet profile with them, but do you have to, I guess, reapply, or does it just carry over?
Great question. So our profile, one thing, because I really do try to put myself in everyone's shoes, and I do think people get fee exhaustion, and so I'm very sensitive to that. And I didn't want them having to pay, $25 every time they went to a property. So our profile is good for 1 year. So if they're moving within 1 year, the pet parent, since it's their profile, they can share it electronically. They literally can go in and share it with a property, or a property can actually, if they're signed up with PetScreening, they can go do a global lookup of that resident's email and request it. And then that person will get an email. They'll confirm to share it. Now, what happens is let's say there's property manager A and property manager B. A was the one that they're moving out of, so that'll be the legacy property manager, and B is the new one. Well, A doesn't lose the profile. We let A maintain that profile in perpetuity, because if there's ever a lawsuit in arrears, we want them to have that data. But the FIDO score could be different at property A than property B, because the FIDO score is dynamic based on every specific rule by each property manager. So the same dog could have different FIDO scores. If one didn't allow a pit bull, but the other one did, there'd be very naturally different scores, just as a very simple example. But it's really the same profile, and they're not paying again. And so that profile would live in 2 places, both still active, even though one is truly being used. And then after the 12-month mark comes, we start nudging that person that they need to renew. And you may say, well, why do they need to renew? And here's why. Because there's actually several reasons. One, a lot of people move in with 10-year-old dogs, and they pass away during the lease. 12-year-old dogs. And what do you think they do, Mike, when that happens?
They get another, some time passes, they get another dog.
And typically it's a puppy.
Right.
And now your level of risk just changed. You had an 11-year-old dog that slept all day, very lower risk. Now you have a puppy that's going to chew baseboards, chew anything, little door stoppers. And so the whole renewal is to make sure, is A, even the same pet that you've had, is that pet still vaccinated? And oh, by the way, did your pet go bite anyone at a dog park at this time of year? And if they say no and they go on the record, fine. But that's just making sure we're staying current. And I promise you, that's a giant gap in the industry. I know, because I lived it for a long time.
Sure. Oh, sure. I'm okay. Now I'm going to take a hard right or a hard left turn. AI seems to be everywhere these days. You've been collecting data on pets and people for the past 7 years. I have to imagine you're incorporating AI, and or you're sort of thinking about it, road mapping how you can put AI against this giant data set you have. And I'm just curious if you're able to share anything you're thinking about as it relates to that.
Yeah, I can. So, a couple things. We want to deliver value to, I would say, but we're a B to B to C company. So we will have 2 clients. The pet parent is a client, they pay the fee and they're using the product. And then of course we have the property manager that has signed up for our services. And I easily could have taken the position, well, I'm only going to work for the property manager, and my number one goal is to get them that FIDO score and get them that data, and just let that person pay $25 and not really care about their experience. But I don't think it's the right thing to do. So we've really focused on what can we deliver back to the pet parent. And by the way, even for the animal owners that never pay a penny, we don't ignore them. What can we deliver to them too? And so we went and purchased an asset called betterpet.com. Think of WebMD, but it's called BetterPet. It's veterinarian procured content. Every piece of content at BetterPet are written by veterinarians. And we have focused on content that's all about pets and rental housing. So how do I keep my dog from barking and bugging my neighbors? So here's where AI has started to come in. We're able to use AI to generate issues that are important to pet owners living in communal housing. And then from that, we go to our vets and they write articles to support it. And now we're really starting to deliver I think the most valuable content that's relevant as times change. Because COVID, the number of pets that people have really shot up. I mean, 1 in 5 people that had a pet went and got another pet during COVID, and so they're home more often because of work schedules, and so they want to do more with their pets. So we're using AI on our content side of our business of delivering valuable content to make pet parents better, which then translates to a much better experience for our property managers. And that is how we've been using AI. I hope that answers your question.
It absolutely does. I'm just fascinated by the entire topic and how people are putting AI against their own databases, but then how they're marrying together databases. So, like, let's say you use a pet, let's say a pet store or any kind of pet related commerce that's out in the world. They have databases also, and when you marry your database together with their database, it seems that they're producing some really creative things, and actually kind of segueing to the next question is identifying different verticals for you have an underlying technology that is very valuable, and it could play into other lines of business for you, and you could use AI to actually identify those different business lines. And not that you're doing that, but you could. And
right. Well, I mean, one example of a vertical would be insurance. Pet health insurance. It is a newer segment of the insurance market. Pet screening. We have a insurance license because we wanted to make sure that we could pursue pet health insurance, and so we've been able to find pet health insurance companies that, of course, want to get in front of our clients, as you can imagine. But the only way I'm going to let them do that is if I make sure our clients, and in this instance, the client is the pet owner, but yet my property manager benefits because a healthy pet is a good pet on site, right? Not one that's barking all day because it's hurting or crying all day because it's sore. And so having good pet health insurance, I think, is something important. So we're able to find pet health insurance companies that'll say, hey, if this pet owner signs up for our policy, we will give them $50 off their policy. Well, that more than double pays for what they paid to do the application to begin with.
right.
That's a big deal. And we are able to get an insurance commission because we have an insurance license. Right. But what's important for me to say is we're so thoughtful. And maybe this is just, I don't like it when my phone blows up with like healthcare plans and warranties. That drives me nuts. And so we are very thoughtful with our data because I want to make sure we put the data to good. And I do think it is good to help someone save $50. A pet health policy is usually about $500 a year. So 10% off is about $50. That's real money. I mean, $50 is, that's a dinner out somewhere, right? Or in this case, that's close to covering maybe their human application, if you will. So right. I feel good about giving them a deal. They save money. It's more accountable. My property manager wins. We might make a small commission. That to me is very fair game. And that's kind of the way we look at it.
So in the property management world, as you well know, if I require my resident to have renter's insurance,
yes,
my bigger umbrella policy for a particular property becomes a little bit cheaper. Does that same sort of thought process apply on the pet side if you have all of your pets are insured in some way on the property because there's less risk in that?
I don't know. I'm not sure if underwriters look at that. I will tell you that we are approached often by insurance companies very intrigued about our data. And I believe at some point that some insurance company somewhere is going to probably want to say, hey, we want to give discounts on GL, general liability policies for companies that are using pet screening. Because, our data, we have first party authentic data. We don't buy our data, pays us to collect the data, right? If you think about it. You're giving me all this data, but you're going to be honest because it's about your dog, and then you pay me for it. So it is the purest kind of data there is. Like, there's no reason for them to lie.
That's right.
And so we're the steward of this, and we want to be very meaningful and thoughtful about it. And we are. We have the best privacy attorney counsel in the country that makes sure that we are never running afoul of any privacy laws. In my role in politics, I call it the high road, then there's the pet screening high road. I'm very, very just conscientious about that. And we do that because we know we have very good data, and I believe that there will be insurance companies like, the underwriters, right? Not the brokers, that actually could somehow develop GL policies, give our clients better rates just by using us. Because I promise you, we are making a difference at our communities. We hear it. I am a sales guy and I'm a good one. but I'm not selling you. I'm just making the point that I go too many places and hear too many people talk about how they love our service. And when they leave company A and go to company B, regional managers will take us with them. I have people that are VPs at one company and go to a VP of another company, they take us with them. That is that is unbelievable to us.
Oh no, it's the best testament ever.
It is. It's the best sales force we could ever have.
That's right.
I remember when, do you know, well, I mean, I consider her to be a friend, although I know she just retired. She was Catherine Newell.
Oh, in name only, yes.
Okay, yeah. So she was kind of chief legal counsel over at Graystar. And she, I just remember getting on a stage one day and she just said, she just talked about PetScreening, about how for her to say that, like, I mean, all the attorneys in that room were like, okay, where's PetScreening? And she is an amazing attorney and she's now retired. I'm going to call her, by the way, and just say, hey, how can you help me? If she's listening to this, she's like, oh God. But anyway, it's just fun. I just, to have an idea 6.5 years ago, it was just an idea. And now to see where we are, I mean, it's the American dream. I'm not joking. I'm so lucky and fortunate to have worked in property management, to see this issue, and then actually, and I'm an entrepreneur, so I put my money where my mouth is, always have. So I actually put my own money in, and I bootstrapped this baby on my own for a long time. And now where we are, we just hit our 100th employee, at the company, and which is not a race I'm trying to win. That's a lot of people, but it's a milestone, and we're growing every day. And I don't know. I'm very lucky, and I can't thank our advocates enough, really.
Yeah, I think it's tremendous, and congratulations, by the way.
You're kind. Thank you.
And as we sort of draw to a close here, I'm wondering if there are any questions that I've not asked you that would be germane for our audience, or certain pieces of the platform that we haven't talked about that you think would be valuable.
One thing that I think the industry is starting to wrestle with is they're listening to the current, when I think of, the political winds are very interesting, right? I mean, just look at what's going on just turn on any news channel, no matter your ideology. It's always like just negative news. But there's a lot of discussion right now around junk fees. Yeah. And I'm going to repeat the word junk fee. I don't really like that term because I believe tenants and residents have rights. Absolutely. I also believe in property rights, and I believe investors make investments in assets, and they have a right to fair market recover what's fair, and the market bears that fruit. That's just a capitalistic system, and I think that's fair. And that said, when I hear junk fees, I think a lot of property managers right now are really looking at what are we charging that we should be charging, or what are we charging that we should not be charging, and what are the areas that we could perhaps start charging that would navigate it. And so, like PetScreening, our fees, we will never fall into the category of junk fees, because pets are a privilege. They're not a right. They're a privilege. And so, that fee that the pet owner has to pay is not a junk fee whatsoever. There are lots of programs and services out there that have ancillary revenue, and you can uplift the lease. And some of those may fall into those categories. And I'm not critical of them. None of them. I am not. I think, though, property managers, or the larger companies I'm talking to, they're really sensitive. And so since they know that they have to be very careful there, it's almost helping us, because they see that the FIDO score and the pet fees are absolutely fair game. And so, we don't fall into the junk fee category. And so that's something exciting for us. We didn't set out on that, but I think it's pretty interesting of what's going on. So we're able to kind of talk about that every time we're on the phone, because this is a safe bet. Like, all you're doing is charging the fees commensurate with the risk you're taking. That is very fair game. And pets you can say no to if you want to. Now, animals you can't, but of course you can't charge fees anyway. So we're not talking about them. We're talking about pets. And so that's a big one. Then, of course, the poo. I mean, when this happens still, people see the word pet screening, and because they only know of DNA testing, they think we screen DNA, and we don't. We're partners with Poo Prints. Or not to throw out company names, but whoever companies are out there. But Poo Prints is one of them, and right. We're good friends. I know their CEO. He spent the night at my house. I know these guys well. But we don't do DNA. That's a great service, and I think it is a great thing. But we're different. I say we're more on the front end. They're more on the back end, and they like that too. Because again, we've done marketing campaigns together, et cetera. But I think we can sometimes get passed over, because people just think that we're the DNA testing. And so I try to always educate people, say, we don't do poo. We're a free service, and this is what we do. And typically the reaction is, oh my God, I've never heard of you. Where have you been? This is awesome. But we just got to reach those folks. That's the hardest part, is reaching them.
Well, I will admit that prior to doing just a slight bit of research before getting on the call today, I thought that, in fact,
Oh,
was
there you
what
go.
you were.
Case in point. And by the way, I mean, and I'm never offended. I'll typically I do these executive meetings and reverse trade shows and meet people when they sit down. I say, do you mind if I just ask you, what do you think we do? And they're kind of puzzled. I'm like, no, I'm just curious. Like, just tell me one sentence we do. And then typically they say poo, and I say, you know what, we don't. And they're like, really? And then I tell them, they're like, wow. And then they'll admit, I really almost didn't take this meeting. So for us, we just have to educate and make sure people understand what we do, and that's the hardest part: get people to slow down and just take a moment, because a few minutes of time, understand what we do, is going to save properties just days and days of challenges. I mean, it really is, and we've got the proof to back it up.
Well, John, I hope that we here at the Multifamily Collective and this collective conversation can be a part of that education process. It's been a pleasure
Yeah,
talking.
enjoy talking. Yeah, you're such a relaxed moderator. It's awesome. Thanks for the authenticity. I think that matters. Listeners, they care. We're not scripted here. So that's nice.
Yeah, that's definitely correct. So I hope that you have an amazing weekend. I
Yes,
appreciate
thank you.
the time you've invested here, and
Yeah.
for everyone else, we'll see you next time on Collective Conversations. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.